Welcome to the last video of 6.1 and 6.2 notes. So we previously went over the two rules, use the inverse operation, and what you do to one side you do to the other. And we also went over examples from 6.1. So let's quickly go over examples from 6.2, multiplication and division equations. So these rules still apply, even though that it's a completely different lesson. These rules apply for all equations. So let's look at multiplication first. If you want to follow along, this is on page 448 in your textbook. So in the first example, we have 30 equals 6x. I know it's kind of hard to see with all these random lines. So 30 equals 6x. I notice that 6 and x are multiplying because that's our coefficient. And when a number is next to a variable like this, they're multiplying. So use the inverse operation. Inverse of multiply is divide. I'm going to divide 6x by 6. But what you do to one side, you do to the other. So if I divide 6 here, I'm going to divide 6 on the left. That's going to give me 30 divided by 6 is 5. And 6x divided by 6 is 1x. So if this is kind of confusing, I put a visual diagram right here. So I put 30, what should I put these circles? I put 30 circles. I needed them into 6 groups. So I put 6 columns here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You also could have done 6 rows. So because I have 6 columns, I wanted to know how many columns of 6 will there be to make 30. So I have 6 columns and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. So 5 rows of 6 columns will give me 30 pieces. And that would give me x equals 5. Let's look at the next example. B. Negative 6a equals 36. This is the same exact type of problem, except now we're using integers. So before I go over the solutions to these two problems, let's go over the basic rules of multiplying and dividing integers from chapters 3 and 4. So when we have same sign, like a positive times a positive, your answer will be positive. So every time you have same signs, you're going to have a positive solution. On the other hand, if you have a different sign, if you have a positive multiplied by a negative, you're going to have a negative. A negative times a positive equals negative. So this is a negative solution. So let's go back to B. Negative 6a equals 36. Inverse operation would be divide by negative 6. What you do to one side, you do to the other. And that's going to give me negative and negative is positive, so positive 1a equals negative 6. So a equals negative 6. Example C, negative 90 equals negative 72. Do the inverse operation. What you do to one side, you do to the other, and you should get D equals 8. Now let's look at example E and F and G. These are on page 449. So the original problem had y over negative 3 equals negative 8. So when we have a numerator and a denominator, this means we're dividing. So I'm dividing by negative 3. Inverse of dividing means I'm multiplying. So I'm going to multiply by negative 3. What you do to one side, you do to the other. So that's going to give me negative 3 and negative 3 become positive 1. 1y equals negative 8 times negative 3 is positive 24. Similarly, we have f, m over negative 5, not negative 5, positive 5. M over positive 5 equals negative 7. Divide, inverse is multiply. I'm going to multiply by 5. Multiply 5 on both sides. M equals negative 7 times 5, or negative 35 equals m. Lastly, we have g, 30 equals b over negative 6. Inverse is multiply by negative 6. What you do to one side, you do to the other. 30 times negative 6 is negative 180. So looking ahead, if we are using inverse operations to solve equations, how much you solve 2/3 x equals 8? Here is a little hint. If I'm multiplying by negative 6, what's my denominator when I'm multiplying by negative 6?